Hi everyone. Due to some technical issue in the previous session, and we will move directly into the next panel. And thanks for your understanding. Just for a quick reminder that you can also scan the QR code on the slides to get a program details and full schedule and more details information. And the panel 5, the influencer and the national identity. This panel will give the 5 papers explore how influencers shaped and negotiate national identity across the different digital and cultural context. And let me introduce you our first presenter, Amina KHATUN, who is a PhD researcher at the University of the Sussex and assistant professor in the Department of the Mass Communication and Journalism, University of the Dhaka. Over to you, Amina. Please share your screen.
Good morning, everyone from UK. My name is Amina KHATUN, and I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Sussex, and I'm a former assistant professor at the University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. So today, I'll be presenting my research titled Visibility as Soft Power, Vulnerability as Cost, Bangladeshi Women Influencers and Influencer Diplomacy. So first of all, over the past decade, we have seen a rapid rise of social media influencer across the globe. In Bangladesh, women influencers are not only they are not creating content, they are actively shaping culture, narratives, and representing the nation to the global audience. This brings us to the concept of influencer diplomacy, where influencers act as informal ambassador of culture and identity. However, this visibility comes with a paradox. The paradox is while it creates power, it also exposes them to significant vulnerability. It means more power, more vulnerability. So for this work, my study is grounded in several theoretical ideas. Number one is soft power, which I have borrowed from the Joseph Nye, and the smart power, this one also from Joseph Nye. I also give a brief look on influencer diplomacy theory, gender visibility, and digital labor. And together, these frameworks help me to understand how online presence translate into both opportunity and at the same time as a risk. So at first, I want to give a look about the Bangladeshi influencer. In Bangladesh, men, women, both are in now dividing themselves for creating content, but most prominent are 3. They are, and all are women. Ruqayyah Jahan Chomok, celebrity and influencer, Barisha Haq, influencer, and Rubaiyat Fatima Tony, she is an entrepreneur plus influencer. I can also mention some others' names. In this picture, you have seen 2 male. One is Rafsan and another is Saddam. They are also very popular figure in my country. So first one is Ruqayyah Jahan Chomok. Ruqayyah Jahan Chomok, she is former Miss World Bangladesh runner-up. At the same time, she's a TV actress, she's a politician, she has a high social media presence, and she also represents hybrid media identity because during our last July uprising, she has a prominent influence over our country because she is a prominent face and she has a high vocal about that uprising time. Number 2, Barisha Haq. She's a brand promoter. She's a social media influencer. She's a fitness host. And at the same time, she has 2.1 million followers in her Instagram and Facebook. And third one is Rubaiyat Fatima Tony. She is an entrepreneur. She's a social media influencer. She has 1 million followers. At the same time, she's very notorious because her followers always try to give her moral scrutiny because of her personal life. In this picture, you can see that her husband, her husband is 38 years older than her, and this is the main um, topic in my country rather than her entrepreneurship. So how they are creating soft power rule. As I have mentioned the name Ruqayya Jahan Chomok, she is the former Miss World Bangladesh, and she always tried to portray Bangladesh by telling cultural story. We have many geographical products, GI products, and we have many prominent places, historical places. Always Ruqayya Jahan Chomok went there, make videos, and try to stream it from her Facebook and Instagram account. And by this way, she can she always try to tell our cultural story. At the same time, she has global audience also, and as she's the one of the most prominent national image, and that in this way she always try to create she is always considered as a diplomatic agent. At the same time, Ruqayya Jahan Chomok also tried to engage herself as politics. You have seen the picture. In this picture, there is our two prominent political leaders. They are former political leaders. Ruqayya Jahan Chomok purchased. Ruqayya Jahan Chomok went there to collect the nomination for next election. So what is the economic role? If I want to talk about their economic contribution in my home country, they have several brand collaboration. And at the same time, they have digital entrepreneurship also. More than around 1,200 uh, brands, not only in my home country, around the world. Also, they have communication and collaboration. And according to one data, its worth is around 200 million per year. At the same time, these women influencers create a vibe in my whole country, like all women can earn their financial independence by subscribing or creating their own product as they are uh, divided by like lifestyle blog, fashion, like food blogging, are so many things. So most of the time, they always try to uh, encourage our women by saying that you can earn your own money if you if you may not have the if you may not have the like proper educational background, but still you can earn money by promoting your product, by promoting other products, or you can make money by promoting local product also. So if I want to give a look, they can support our local economy also. And according to the business standard research, they say that their annual contribution is around 140 million per year in our local economy. So why I consider visibility as power? Definitely visibility as power, because when country people see them, they can build trust, they can build relatability. At the same time, their visibility also increase the algorithm. And at the same time, it also shapes to our global perception also, because they are influencer, they are a known figure, they are familiar figure. So at the same way, they can create aspirational identity also. But what happened when that type of vulnerability uh, considered as a cost? Definitely, there is a tremendous cost, because they need to face online harassment, they need to face moral policing, they need to face public scrutiny at every moment. As I have mentioned earlier, Ruqayya Jahan Chomok, she is a political person, she is a former Miss World Bangladesh, she has engaged herself as promoting our culture and identity. People always try to navigate her personal life through her Instagram and Facebook ID. And every time people try to measure her, how she is presenting her personal life. And I have mentioned earlier, Rubat Islam Tony, her husband is a seniorist person who is older than 38 years older than her. People always try to bully her by saying that she is a gold digger, or she married this type of sugar daddy only for only for his money. So it's not easy for a women to tolerate this type of backlash, this type of comments, this type of attitude every time, every single day, because they are trying to promote our country. They are trying to boost our economy. But at the same time, because of only being women, they are facing this type of words, this type of comments. So yeah, uh, as media only try to cover their private events, their followers only always try to comment only their private events, their personal life, and they always try to forget that there is a boundary, there's a blurred line between private life and social life. So this way they are facing vulnerability. And
Sorry to
definitely,
interrupt you, Amina. We need to leave some time for other presenter.
okay,
That's really
thank you so
important
much.
speech.
Just finally, I want to say that these influencers are not just the content creators, they are the cultural diplomat without any protection. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so
Thank
much.
you so much. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Yunyi, and in this presentation, I'm going to share some of the key findings from my PhD thesis by focusing on nation branding led by social media users, including those developed into influencers from an audience perspective. And let me first introduce the concept of nation branding and why I chose it in my analysis. Especially when presenting in a symposium that focusing on the adjacent concept of diplomacy. So in my research, I'm interested in how the idea of nation is constructed and communicated to achieve particular interests, especially commercial interests. And this therefore aligns well with the concept of nation branding, which focuses on discourses and practices aimed at reconstituting nationhood through marketing and branding paradigms. Having said that, it is worth acknowledging that the line between nation branding and public diplomacy is increasingly blurred, especially in the digital environment. And here are some examples of nation branding. So official campaigns such as the Cool Japan strategy, films such as The Wandering Earth, which projects China as the great power, and sporting events such as the Beijing Olympic Games, which aims to project a favorable Chinese image to the world. And a lit review on nation branding highlights two key trends. The first one is that existing studies tend to focus more on how a nation is promoted by governments, companies, and branding experts. As you can see from the examples mentioned earlier, they come from a very top-down perspective. In contrast, recently a small number of studies started looking at the ways in which ordinary people and influencers promote a nation on social media out of their own initiative. Although these studies provided valuable insights, there is a lack of a thorough theoretical discussion that captures these type of activities. And the second key trend shows that existing studies mainly focus on the production side and media representation, and there are only very few studies focusing on the reception, especially regarding to what extent nation branding is effective and how do audiences perceive and engage with it. So to address these lacunas, my studies therefore focus on nation branding led by social media users and try to understand this through an audience study. So I firstly introduced the concept of user-generated nation branding, which refers to the voluntary creation and public distribution of nation branding messages undertaken by individuals who are not professional nation branders. And the theorization draws on previous research from different traditions. For example, by engaging with literature on producer and user-generated content or branding, I aim to investigate to what extent user-generated nation branding differs from traditional forms of nation branding. And I also engage with studies on influencers because I see user-generated nation branding as a continuum that captures the activities of both ordinary online users and influencers. And I also engage with the work on Orientalism and the gaze, aiming to understand to what extent user-generated nation branding leads to the reproduction of Orientalist tropes and unequal power relations. However, I won't be able to cover all these points in my presentation, but if you're interested to know more, feel free to get in touch and let me know. And in terms of methods, I chose a case that featured a popular influencer called Chris Brawl, who films the everyday life of a British man living in Japan. And in his content, he introduces the country through topics such as travel, food, scenery, and forms of cultural comparison, through which he highlights an image of a hyper-technological and innovative Japan. I then conducted semi-structured interviews with 17 participants who identified themselves as regular viewers of the Abroad Japan accounts. And they also came from very diverse backgrounds, featuring both Japanese and international audiences. And the interviews were conducted online and then transcribed and analyzed using a thematic analysis. The findings point to the key concept of authenticity and several features underpinning audience perceptions of user-generated nation branding as more authentic. And I will now start with the first one, everydayness. So the most common feature of user-generated nation branding mentioned by audiences is the fact that it deals with the everyday situations. And this everydayness comes from the small and mundane activities, contributing to the idea that audiences are being offered to engage with the real nation. So, for example, the participant Raymond draws a distinction between the less familiar side of Japan, such as Japanese people celebrating Christmas by having KFC, and the more familiar side of Japan that is usually seen in traditional marketing. So here I use Goffman's concepts to analyze this quote. So in his work, Goffman introduced the concepts front stage and backstage. And he considered front stage as the place where the performance is given, such as the living room, while the backstage is the place where the performer can relax, they can drop their front, such as the bedroom. So in this way, if we see traditional forms of nation branding as presenting the front stage of the nation, that is the conventional and ideal depiction of the nation, then user-generated nation branding offers the backstage of the nation, enabling audiences to access an alternative side of the nation that highlights the daily and the mundane. However, such backstage can be manufactured to generate an authentic experience, and this is demonstrated in previous studies on authenticity in the tourist settings, such as McKenna's concept of stage backstage, and also previous studies on influencers, such as Aberdeen's concepts of calibrated amateurism and porous authenticity. So applying these insights to user-generated nation branding, the backstage of the nation offered by the influencer can equally be seen as a stage backstage. And specifically, this stage backstage offered by Chris Brawl and valued by his foreign audiences can be seen as a shallower version focusing on aspects of the nation that are less familiar to outsiders but more familiar to insiders. And the second key feature contributing to the perceived authenticity is rawness. And specifically, this involves what Reid calls real talk, namely the tendency to cover both the good and bad sides of a topic. For example, the first participant, Yunyi, links the authenticity of Brawl's content with his disclosure of problems in Japanese society. And the second participant, Keiko, further links this to Brawl's exposure of his raw reactions and his use of colloquial language. So all of this can be seen as one's backstage language and behavior. So in this way, by strategically adding backstage elements, Brawl's content therefore feels more authentic. And the last key feature is amateurism. Audiences tend to consider Brawl's content as more authentic because they see him as an ordinary person rather than as a professional working for a commercial or institutional organization. For example, the participant Joe made a comparison between Brawl's content and Japanese TV shows. And the way they discuss Brawl as a social media friend who's showing them the real Japan is key. And here, the parasocial relationships between the influencer and their audience play a significant role in cultivating digital intimacy and enhancing a sense of authenticity. And this is consistent with previous studies on influencers and content creators. And the findings further point to a temporal dimension. Broad audiences tend to consider his content, tend to engage with his content over time, whereas their engagement with traditional forms of nation branding tends to be transient or rather limited. And this therefore suggests that parasocial relationships formed in the reception of user-generated nation branding help cultivate a sense of authenticity. And so to quickly conclude, my study introduces the concept of user-generated nation branding and conducts an audience study of it. And the findings point to the significance of authenticity. And in particular, the concept of Backstage helps us understand that it is the small and mundane activities that audiences value about user-generated nation branding. Although such Backstage remains curated, parasocial relationships are important in sustaining long-term engagement and cultivating perceptions of authenticity. And thank you so much for listening.
So I'm presenting on vlogging and influencer diplomacy. Wode, one of Africa's most influential diplomats, and the Pan-African rebranding of Ghana and Africa to the world. The outline, I'm going to give a background, purpose statements. I'll talk a little bit about the methodology, the conceptual framework, which borders on Pan-Africanism, the analysis of 2 selected videos, and then I draw the conclusions. Much of existing literature on influencer diplomacy has focused on non-African context. For African-specific studies, the 2021 African-based research on digital diplomacy and its implications for international affairs in the special issue of the Journal of South African International Affairs provides insights from perspective of conventional diplomats and stakeholders, including institutions, embassies, and ministries. While these provide invaluable insights into digital diplomacy by states and institutional stakeholders in Africa, there is little knowledge on influencer practices in diplomacy and how non-conventional or digital natives impact diplomacy in Africa. This paper focuses on Wode, born Bertold Kobner Winkler, one of Africa's prominent influencers and travel bloggers, with 2 million YouTube subscribers and 3.5 million followers on Facebook so far. According to Yozoglu's classification, Maya is recognized as a global and a mega influencer who commands an international appeal and a large following. He studied in China, and during this time, he became aware that China's public image of Africa was reductive, and he was vocal about how Africans were treated. Moreover, he witnessed China's spirit of self-determination and the value of self-protection. He decided to highlight these characteristics in the African context to counter negative perceptions of the continent. As a result, he returned with the aim of traveling to each African country to showcase its landscape and celebrate the excellence of its people on the continent and also in the diaspora. He has so far visited 38 African countries. He utilizes YouTube and other social media platforms to market Africa and project a portrayal of the continent that is often overlooked. Due to the positive and global impact of his work, the Foreign Ministry of the Republic of Ghana awarded him a diplomatic passport in September 2025, along with 4 other distinguished Ghanaians in recognition of their role as cultural ambassadors. Meanwhile, Maya also served as one of the key coordinators for the African-American streamer IShowSpeed's African and Ghana tour as part of the streamer's 2026 Africa tour, and he facilitated the approval for a Ghanaian passport to be issued to the streamer, who has irrefutable ties to Ghana. Maya's case provides invaluable insights into influencer diplomacy and formal state recognition in the African context. helping to understand how state support affects influencer practices and vice versa, how influencer practices impact diplomatic processes. Drawing on principles of Pan-Africanism, the paper examines how the state recognition of his work with a diplomatic passport affects Maya's interest in rebranding Africa and his influencer practices, and how his interests and practices impact influencer and mediate international relations with soft power. For the methodology, we selected 2 videos. He has actually made 2 videos on his China trip with the president, and we selected the first one because it combines reports on the state visit as well as his personal story. And then we also selected I Should Speed a stream, a 1-hour compressed stream that also highlights his participation and influence. Conceptual framework, the Pan-Africanism is an ideological, political and cultural movement and concept that emerged in the 19th century. It was born out of the socio-political and economic subjugation and exploitation of Africans and the diaspora by Europe through the years of slavery, imperialism, and apartheid. It evokes consciousness that questions oppression and domination, and it's also about creating conditions for the continent to be regenerated and its dignity restored. Various actors and agents are weaving in, and Maya's work as an influencer and influencer diplomat embodies Pan-African ideas. His videos are rooted in the ideals of Pan-Africanism, showing the vibrancy, diversity, and shared experiences across the cultures, people, businesses, policies, among others. The selected video thematically were analyzed, and one theme that emerged: influencer diplomacy, Ghana-China relation, government policy, and personal story. There's no doubt that the way diplomacy is practiced in the African continent is changing, and Ghana has not been left behind. Conventional diplomacy in foreign ministries and stakeholders have embraced influencer culture into their diplomatic practices. In Ghana, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs communicates daily on X and Facebook accounts with the public and his foreign counterparts. And social media influencers acting unofficially as cultural influencers have now been recognized and been included in official state visits. Wode Maya's first diplomatic state visits took him back to China, a place where he had previously studied aeronautical engineering. Ooh, sorry, I left the slide, sorry. He traveling on a commercial flight. Sorry. I missed my. The influencer diplomacy that the video introduces centers on Maya's interview with the president as a facilitator rather than displaying political opinion. His platform enables, so the picture you are seeing is his visit with the president. And one of the issues that he's been championing policies have been approved on it, and the borderless Africa is on the move. Maya is not a political, what am I doing? Is not a political content creator, nor does he self-identify as political or a politician. But in the case, he facilitates the state's communication efforts to inform the global public, especially the Ghanaian public, about initiatives the government and the state are involved in. The influencer has stated that Ghana's political scene is polarized, and getting involved could jeopardize his brand, reputation, and credibility. It is uncommon for Maya to create content on politics or political campaigns, and it's not part of his self-branding strategies as found in other studies. This notwithstanding, his China state visit video can be viewed as political in its approach and mission. We argue that it is inherently political since some of the issues highlighted in it transcend politics, and it also serves as a counter-narrative to prevailing negative images and stereotypes of Africa. In traveling to China with the president of Ghana video, Maya amplifies his personal story where he reveals the significance of the diplomatic passport he holds. His personal story, which connects to China, is centered on the way that not only brings the content creation to a full circle, but also highlights his struggle, achievements, and rewards as an influencer diplomat who holds a diplomatic passport. His personal story, as presented in the video, could broadly be categorized into 4, but we will focus on 1. The video emphasizes the importance of the passports he holds and how that resolves the challenges he used to have through deportation, traveling to some African countries. He has noted that the diplomatic passport allowed him to travel to China and other countries without a visa, and he enjoyed courtesies never extended to him, experiences that are in stark contrast to the difficulties he encountered traveling across Africa to create content with his regular passports. It is worth noting that the challenges motivated his advocacy for a visa-free and borderless Africa. The influencer's transformed experience as a travel blogger illustrates the difference diplomatic passports can make for an African influencer and the positive impact it can have on their work, provided the conditions under which such state support is extended are not subject to stringent political strings. The other team, Influencer Diplomacy, I should speak passports and global state visibility. Influencers have gradually been presented as new holders of power, and leveraging such power in diplomacy can create ripple effects for influencers and the state. Let me check the time. They can equally influence how the public engages with the state. In the case of Maya, his involvement with I Should Speed Tour, Speed Does Africa Tour 28 Day, and his recommendation for the Minister of Foreign Affairs to grant Speed a Ghanaian passport potentially aims to augment his interest in demystifying Africa, to expose global audiences to unfiltered Ghanaian and African narratives, to boost visibility and tourism on the continent. I should speak born Darren Watkins. He's a 21-year-old African-American, and he ended his Africa tour in Ghana after visiting 19 other countries. He is estimated to have a cumulative following of over 150 million across various social media platforms, a following that is 4 times Ghana's projected population of 34.4 million in 2026. The Ghana tour is significant because the country is regarded as the ancestral home where Black Americans connect to their roots. With his large global following, Speed's itinerary put together by the tour and Maya's input saw Speed visiting and experiencing Ghana through a beautiful scenery, culture, history, and entertainment. The global public response to Speed's Ghana tour was overwhelming, not only emphasizing the country as a travel destination for people on the continent and in the diaspora, but also appreciating the experience the country created for Speed. Wode Maya reports that he understood the stream offer had a potential to generate traffic for the country and boost tourism and investment opportunities. I would like to go on to conclude. So these are a few. This is Maya, and I should speed on when he came on. This is an iconic place that he visited. He was taken through a traditional naming ceremony, and he was given an African traditional name. Here we can see him donning a traditional kente, which is a Ghanaian, a symbol of Ghanaian identity. So in conclusion, the paper set out to examine how state recognition of Wode Maya's achievement and the granting of a diplomatic passport affect his influenza practices and interest in rebranding Africa, and how his interest and practice influence Ghana's diplomatic processes and mediate Ghana's international relations. From the analysis, several key findings are highlighted. The paper reveals that conditions in Africa pose several challenges for travel influencers due to structures that make intra-travel almost impossible. Strategic support in the form of a diplomatic passport given to an influencer of great repute by a government could yield mutual benefit and increase the connection between the influencer culture and state diplomacy. Maya's diplomatic passport symbolizes a recognition of his achievements. It legitimizes his role as an influencer diplomat and
Sorry to
formalizes.
interrupt you, Dr.
Oh,
Wusu.
I'm done, right? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
you're
you.
done. That's perfect
Thank
work.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, and as our final presenter concluded their talk, this is online symposium is also drawing to the close. And as many of the presentation today highlight terms of the crisis and the different culture and digital infrastructure means that our commitment to the platform diversity voices and the research sometimes comes to the technical issue. And on behalf of our lab, thank you so much for your understanding. And thank you all for being here and joining us today. It's truly been such a wonderful event, and I've learned so much, and hope you found the discussion and engaging, inspiring as we have. On behalf of the Influencer Ethnography Research Lab, we'd like to thank you being part of the Influencer Diplomacy Symposium. And before we close, I'd like to extend some very special thanks. First, to Professor Forrest to welcome the country at the beginning of our event. And to all of our amazing presenters, many of who join us across very different time zones, some very early in the morning and other late at night. And thank you for all generosity, your insight, and for the contributing such to the range of the perspectives to the emerged and important field. And to our keynote speaker, Dr. Zoe Hurley, thank you for such a thought-provoking and inspiring keynote. It's really set off tone for the entire symposium. And a huge thank you as well to our incredible IERLab team, especially Naomi Robinson and Christine Harkate, for all of the behind-the-scene work that made today run successfully. And of course, my amazing colleague Faye Mercier and Professor Crystal Abiding. Thank you so much for the co-hosting the event and for your continued support and guidance. And do you want to say something, Professor Crystal?
And thank you to Zhang Wuxuan also for leading us to this close. For all of you who have hung in there with us all the way to the end, we want to say a very big thank you. Part of the logistics of engaging with the Asia Pacific would mean that we're working with a diversity of peoples with very different tech infrastructure and requirements. So thank you so much for being patient with us as we were navigating all the tech issues as well.
And we were also grateful to all of you, our audiences, for joining us, engaging with our panels, and contributing to us a thoughtful space. In the look ahead, recording of the selected presentations will be made available on our website soon. And so please do keep an eye on our Influencer Ethnography Research Lab. And we also hope to develop the papers presented today into the potential edit collection. And we look forward to continuing this conversation beyond today. And if you have any further questions for the presenter or about the event, please feel free to reach out at contact@IERLab.com. And finally, just a quick note about what's coming next. Our IERLab affiliated organization, the TikTok Cultural Research Network, TCRN, will be hosting a Chinese language event and launching new resources next quarter. So please do stay tuned for more detail via our website on slides. And thank you all once again for being here today. And here's a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you all.